Monsieur le Président,
Chair, Director General, ladies and gentlemen, members of the governing body, dear colleagues, all of you here today, in this room or online. Allow me first to express my solidarity and my empathy with my colleagues and with the entire community of workers at the ILO, at the United Nations, and throughout the world, who are affected by political, economic, or social decisions that go against the founding principles of the fundamental human right to work, which is the foundation of a person's dignity, their well-being, and fulfillment as human beings. It's a responsibility that I will not take lightly. I refer to this opportunity to represent all ILO staff and to share with you the major concerns and perspectives that are at the heart of our work and our commitment to implement the social justice mandate that you have entrusted to us. This responsibility is all the greater as I have the trust of a large majority of ILO staff, almost 70% of whom are members of the staff union. This trust was strongly evident at our last general meeting last month, which was marked by the adoption of a resolution concerning the consequences for ILO staff of the decisions of the U.S. administration regarding its funding of the ILO. This resolution gives the staff union a clear mandate to take any action it deems necessary in the current context based on our principles and values of social dialogue and collective bargaining, and reaffirms that the essential value to be considered and preserved is that of the human being, and that is more important than ever to ensure the organization's duty of care towards its employees and to promote our principles of non-discrimination and solidarity. Ladies and gentlemen of the governing body, this time I will spare you the list of my feelings as I did last October. My humanity might bore you, and after all, too few months have passed since then. This is also one of the reasons why I will not comment in detail on the documents that you have on the agenda of the Program, Financial and Administrative section. Moreover, last October, I enthusiastically welcomed the program priorities with regard to the objectives for ILO staff and called for the appropriate resources to be effectively allocated so that these objectives are translated into tangible and forceful action. In any case, my intervention comes at the end of your deliberations on most of the documents submitted to you in this section. Moreover, many of those relating directly to the employment of ILO colleagues were submitted for information, pending substantive proposals, and I am unable to hide my surprise at some of the proposals presented that we saw since yesterday, whether on relocations or on the use of workspaces. The staff union remains as determined as it was last October to make progress through constructive dialogue with, as a priority, negotiations on the harmonization of working conditions, regardless of the sources of funding for contracts and greater mobility, enabling the organization to implement reforms aimed at achieving excellence in working conditions, finding pragmatic, creative, and innovative solutions to ensure exemplary working conditions. The fight against job insecurity and the promotion of job security and non-discrimination are key aspects for better productivity and exemplary performance. We hope, therefore, that the governing body meeting in October will provide an opportunity to present tangible results to you following the negotiations that we wish to conduct with our partners in dialogue in the administration, whom I greet, and which can only be successful if they are conducted in accordance with the principles of collective bargaining and social dialogue. Members of the governing body, I would like to talk to you today about trust. The trust that we aspire to in various forms in order to be the architects of social justice in the world of work, at various levels of responsibility and in different roles, of course. First and foremost, I refer to the trust that we place in the foundations of universal human rights, and in particular, the rights at work that we are responsible for promoting. It is a normative framework rooted in history, whose principles have been built up gradually and which have proven their worth. As ILO officials, we are driven by a deep sense of responsibility for this legacy, which gives meaning to our work. We are privileged not to be here just to put food on the table, as the saying goes, but rather to be working towards a mission. This is what drives us to go ever further, despite the mental and psychological burden. The results of the organizational health survey shared with all staff at the beginning of the year are alarming in terms of self-assessment of burnout and work overload. You are, of course, the architects of the construction and promotion of these foundations, and we should have mutual trust in the preservation of our common heritage and the exercise of our shared responsibility. Then there is trust in the ILO's ability to reinvent itself and prove its relevance despite changing developments and priorities. Throughout history, we have been able to provide a normative framework for key issues of the day, and through our technical cooperation activities, we provide support to you, our constituents, in the implementation of this mandate. The challenges are too great for the ILO not to be on hand to address the issues of technological upheavals and artificial intelligence, biological risks, the care economy, reconstruction, fair and equitable transitions, the new social contract, among others. Throughout its history, the ILO has had to reinvent itself in terms of its structures and operations, securing compulsory budget contributions and mobilizing ever more voluntary budget contributions, enabling the implementation of our mandate thanks to all 3,617 colleagues around the world. So yes, the ILO is an old lady, an elder. She is wise, but she's always found, thanks to our predecessors, an elixir of youth, and it is now up to us together to renew the recipe with the ingredients of our time. This recipe cannot be achieved without the founding principle of social dialogue. Of course, it is long and sometimes tedious to reach a decision that is taken on the basis of consultations, negotiations, and consensus. You know this as much as I do, but this is the recipe for success. So yes, it is not easy, and often it requires patience and time. For the ILO Staff Union, I make no secret of the fact that we can never rest on our laurels. Vigilance must be constant to ensure that decision-making respects these principles of internal social dialogue, and that we are not faced with a fait accompli. And here I'd like to thank the workers' spokesperson, Kathleen, who stated yesterday in her words of introduction the importance of involving colleagues in decision-making regarding working conditions. This reminder is important because in the end, everyone wins in this way. But who said that social dialogue was innate and self-evident. That would be too easy, and often success does not come easily. So yes, we must maintain this confidence in our principles, because even if it is not self-evident, there are no other options for us to be winners together in the end. Of course, trust does not exclude control, and obviously it is up to you to carry out checks to identify the areas and processes that need to be modified. We also understand, of course, the importance of having to question, of being able to improve or even abandon subjects and solutions that seemed promising but that have not borne fruit or are no longer bearing fruit. This is also one of the expectations of my colleagues, whose schedules are increasingly busy as the number of priorities and areas of work increase, without being able to leave aside other subjects that continue to be considered essential. Ladies and gentlemen of the governing body, without trust, we are paralyzed in our decision-making and in the implementation of the actions that should be necessary to achieve our objectives in an effective and relevant manner. It is therefore revealing to see the number of consultations with the Ethics Office, as reported this morning, or the number of allegations and complaints and investigations processes. Of course, it is important and essential to ensure that our actions are in line with the ethics required of our status as international civil servants. And I can only thank my colleague Jordi, my colleagues in HR, the mediator Gabriela, and the social assistant, and thank them for all of their advice. Many colleagues come to me with questions about the ethical alignment of their actions due to this fear of not doing the right thing, revealing a loss of bearing, leading to paralysis on principles that should not, however, be up for debate and on the basis of which we were recruited. We are used to building this trust in a context of stability. However, we are currently in a context of insecurity, with many of our reference points seemingly turned upside down, and a pace of change that is accelerating, overwhelming us, and frightening us. We need leaders who can guide us and provide us with a framework. We need to find the keys to this trust in the context of successive crises. The call for better leadership has thus been identified as one of the key areas for improvement in the ILO's Organizational Health Survey of colleagues. We must find ways to share risks better in order to ensure the robustness and sustainability of our results. It is currently frightening for many colleagues to be in a state of uncertainty as to whether their projects will be able to continue or whether, on the contrary, funding will be stopped, thus jeopardizing all the results that are in the process of being achieved, rendering the labor of the past in vain, and jeopardizing the achievement of our common objectives. It is also frightening for colleagues around the world not to know what tomorrow will bring, whether they are already facing or will have to face dismissal, with all the related consequences, including personal ones. It is frightening to wonder to what extent the ILO will be ready and able to fulfill its duty of care and protect its most precious asset, the people who work for it. Ladies and gentlemen of the governing body, the staff that I represent are not naive. Our world is a tough one. It seems that the margin for error is very limited and that expectations are immense. We need this mutual trust to move forward. At the heart of this trust, there is an essential ingredient that we cannot afford to forget, and that is solidarity. It is this solidarity that allows us to put people, kindness, and empathy back at the center of our actions, and that allows us to remember that if we are here together, it is because we have no other choice in order to promote social justice than to build and maintain this trust. To conclude, I would like to address all my colleagues at headquarters and in the field and thank you from the bottom of my heart for your commitment, hard work, and dedication. Each of us plays an essential role in our collective success, and it is thanks to your daily involvement that we can move forward together. Ladies, gentlemen, delegates, colleagues, let us continue to move forward with confidence and solidarity because we are a strong and united organization. Thank you very much for your attention.